never devoted a book to understanding the psychology of two people under these kinds of conditions. Because the thing about it is I'm not writing about peacetime leadership.
Mm.
I'm writing about guys who, like we've said, they're in the thick of it. And they're being asked to do something that is, when both of these men are asked to do something that is basically impossible, which is to fly from Guam to Japan and bring Japan to its knees from the air
Right.
using, either conventional explosives or napalm.
Mm.
You try doing that. I mean, it's insane. The weather alone,
Mm.
like you're not flying modern aircraft. You're flying 1940s aircraft over 1,500 miles of open water in some of the most treacherous weather in the world.
I mean, through the jet stream, which we didn't even know existed at the time, by the way.
Yeah, they don't realize that over Japan there are 200-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
And when you're coming back, like they don't have all this fancy navigational GPS, whatever. They're trying to fly back to two little specks in the ocean, and if they miss them or run out of fuel or any of those things, they ditch into the ocean and no one ever finds them.
Mm.
Right? It's just like, it's crazy. And then before LeMay gets to Guam, he's in India, in Calcutta, and they're trying to hit Japan from Calcutta. And all you have to do, if you want to understand how crazy that is look at a map, because you know what's between those two places? The Himalayas, the tallest mountain range in the world.
Right.
They would climb over the Himalayas, lose insane numbers of planes, climb down, land in China, refuel, fly to Japan, turn around, come back, and then climb back over the Himalayas. I mean, it's like, I forget where I was out somewhere, and I was talking to a guy, and he's like, oh, I was telling the story. He goes, oh, my dad was one of those pilots who flew over the Himalayas. And it's like, he never expected to survive the war. I mean, no expectation whatsoever. It's like, Jesus, like, it's just, these stories are insane.
These stories, yeah, these stories are insane. And I'm wondering, have you heard from any of the family members who read this, your book and said, oh, I didn't know this about my grandfather or my great-grandfather, or thank you for doing this? Because, I mean, a guy like you, let's face it, you're pretty much a Bible author at this point, which means, you sell as many copies as the Bible around the world whenever you put out a new book. And you can kind of do whatever you want. And it's amazing. The fact that you chose to do this story, did any of the family members reach out and be like, man, thank you for doing this. This is incredible. I didn't know this.
It's starting to trickle in. So the book's only been out a week, so it's early yet, but I got a text this morning from a friend of mine whose father's a pilot and from a family of Air Force family. And he said, he listened to the audiobook and he was like, I listened to it twice. And they just said, I listened to it twice. Thank you. And that's all I needed to hear. It's clearly, you're absolutely right. If you have family who went through this experience, hearing these stories, it resonates, but it does more than it resonates, because, it reminds you about what your own family did for this country.
Right.
Right. That's the thing, that someone in your family made a sacrifice, a serious sacrifice. And, sacrifice is not a word that I believe has been uttered in the United States in the last 25 years. In fact, I don't even think it's in the dictionary anymore in the United States, but there was a time when it was in the dictionary. And this is about that time, right? When that's what you did. You're 20, some of these guys are 20 years old.
Yeah.
And they're just going. So that I am starting to hear from people who genuinely, I think, are touched by the fact that the sacrifice of their family is being remembered.
Right. And I think you'll probably hear from more people. This is specific to a certain group of people, but the story or the concept is not. I mean, there's a lot of people who have done this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to do is, I talked about the World War II thing, reading and watching those films and documentaries, but I like to meditate sometimes on what those bombers were thinking when they left for those operations, or what Medal of Honor recipients and other people like that were thinking when they just decided to walk into near certain death, and why they did it. I like to consider what those people might expect of me as a survivor or recipient of that sacrifice,
and how they might expect me to live my life. You know what I mean? If they were still around, a lot of them aren't. It's good to appreciate and honor sacrifice, but it's more important, in my opinion, to meet the expectations that are implicit in that sacrifice, which is to be a good human being, right? Support your country, even if it means calling your country an asshole sometimes, whatever the case is, right? It's think about the mindset of dying for people you don't know, right? Because you believe in the principles of a country that says individual liberty is the most important thing in the world, right? So what are you doing to support that? Not only legally or politically or any of that bullshit, but what are you doing to make sure that everybody around you has the same access to that you do, right?
Right.
We spend, like you said, sacrifice is a word that's not really around much anymore, but goddamn, it'd be nice if it was.